We do learn a lot about ourselves through stories. We learn how to fall in love through stories. We learn how to be brave through stories.
Yeah.
So yes, of course I'm interested in what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
You have to be, otherwise
Yeah.
your world gets smaller and smaller and drier and
Yeah.
emptier.
There's a very significant bench that's in the Botanical Gardens, which is where Will and Lyra end up returning to every year on Midsummer's Day. Why did you pick that day?
Because Will and Lyra have to go back to their different worlds, of course, and they're never going to see each other again. But their worlds sort of map onto each other. So in Will's world, there's a divinity school. In Lyra's world, there's a divinity school. And it could have been anywhere, but the Botanical Garden is a beautiful place. And Midsummer's Day is the same in both worlds. And I thought, if they both went there at the same time, actually, Nicholas Wright, who adapted the story for the National Theatre, had a better idea. I had them meeting at midday. He had them meeting at midnight.
Yes, that's
much more romantic.
Yeah.
And he opened the play with a big tree with a seat around it. And Will is there in his world, and Lyra is there in her world, and they're talking sort of almost across each other, but it was a magical thing.
I always think benches are really quite romantic in themselves, aren't they?
Yeah,
It's those inscriptions on benches, and I always think,
that's right.
I'd quite like a bench.
Well, you need a sort of arbour,
Big
roses, you know?
Yeah. I don't know about that, but yes, I think they're really magical. But talking of Lyra, let's talk about Lyra, because you've already said that she's this character that people really respond to, and you obviously noticed her in your classes, those kind of girls like that. What is it about her? What are her traits and qualities that take us on this journey?
Well, I think the one that stayed with me for longest and became clearer to me as I was writing the story was that she's capable of enormous affection. She's enormously affectionate towards Roger, the little boy whom she looks after and then goes out in search of and goes down to the world of the dead to bring him back. That's pretty, it's quite a lot of love to do that. And she's capable of both giving affection and inspiring it.
Yeah.
That, I think, is her main characteristic.
Yeah.
But what do I know? I only wrote her.
Yeah, I always think that, it's funny, I was thinking about all your characters in the books, and I feel a lot of them seem like loners, or, Lee Scoresby, Yorick, Mrs. Coulter in her own way is completely separate from everyone else around her. Do you think that was intentional? Are you interested in the sort of loner or the outcast or the...
That's something that I hadn't noticed before. You pointed something out that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
What was it that interested you in Mrs. Coulter, as a character to play?
God, there's so much. You have created the most mysterious woman on the page ever to be written, I would say. I remember when I got the call to play Mrs. Coulter, and to my shame, I hadn't read your books. I'd known about the play, but I hadn't read them, so I didn't really know who Mrs. Coulter was. And my agent was saying, Ruth, are you mad? She's not only the most extraordinary and, female literary character that exists. So anyway, I got reading, and I find her endlessly fascinating, because what I think you do so brilliantly in the books is you create questions, you don't answer everything. So for me as an actor, getting inside that was that, one, she's so deep, I can keep peeling back layers of this character, and I had to form my own theory, which I wouldn't ever love to share because it might not be your theory of who the character is, but it doesn't matter. It's like I had to sort of create a backstory and a world for her that made sense to me. But I thought the key of her was always about her relationship with the monkey. It's about what that's relationship with herself. So that is the key to understanding her and her journey throughout the 3 books.
That was the great advantage for me of discovering the daemon, because what I could do, well, I'm still discovering things I can do with that idea. And it wasn't until I realized that children's demons change and adults' demons don't, That was the key to the story for me, the key to the whole thing.
And where did the idea come from for the daemon?
I don't know where it came from, but I remember where it was when it came to me.
Where were you?
At my desk, of course.
Yeah.
That's the place to be. To be honest, and I haven't told this to many people, the daemon was for me the answer to a technical problem.
Yeah.
And the technical problem was this: when you're describing a character on their own, doing something, you've got to tell the audience what she's thinking, as well as what she's doing and what she's saying, but you can't say it because there's nobody else there. Now that is slow going, actually, to read. It's much, much quicker if there's someone else there and they can talk, and he can say, let's not do this, and she says, oh, don't be such a coward. No, come on, she says, I'll look at it. So instantly there's a dynamic there between the two characters.
And names, okay, so names, because like my monkey doesn't have a name.
No,
Why?
I couldn't think of one.
Really?
That's it. So.
How did you think of the other ones? Because they're quite like...
Well, there are two ways. It's like book titles. Either they come at once or they come after a long period of thought and reflection and throwing away and all that sort of stuff. Mrs. Coulter, for some reason, was always Mrs. Coulter. I don't know why. Some people have asked me if I was basing her on the American political commentator Ann Coulter.
Really?
But I wasn't, because I'd never heard of her. And my Mrs. Coulter is far more interesting than Ann Coulter anyway. Lyra was always Lyra. And now there are quite a lot of Lyras.
Loads of Lyras, yeah.
Yeah, so I was pleased with that.
Asriel
was always Asriel. Yorick Bernison wasn't always... I had to look quite hard to find the name for Yorick Bernison. In the end, I got it from an my old university copy of the Edda, the Norse Edda, which I'd never read.
During this, obviously we're at the end, well no we're not, right in the middle of a pandemic. This isn't ending anytime soon. Do you find like the things that are happening in the world, do they affect your ability to write or to imagine? Can you shut that stuff off?
No, and I wouldn't want to shut it off because, I'm a citizen as well as as anything else, as well as a father and a grandfather and a writer and a taxpayer and all those other things. So yes, of course I'm interested in what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
You have to be, otherwise your world gets smaller and smaller and drier and emptier. So yes, but that doesn't mean I want to rush out at once and write a pandemic novel.
No. No one wants to.
It doesn't happen that quickly anyway.
No.
Experience has got to be, stored and meditated over, turned over occasionally, and before it'll come out in what you write. But no, I don't believe in an ivory tower. I think it's a bad place to live. When you're playing a character, it might be Mrs. Coulter, it might be Hedda Gabler, do you come at her from inside or from outside? I mean, do you need, for example, to know what sort of shoes she'd be wearing, or do you need to know what her childhood was like, or both?
It's a combination of both. I think the process, it's always different for each character you play, but I think I start, sometimes when you're reading, a voice often is something quite important to me. And weirdly, when I'm reading, it sort of comes instinctively. A voice comes instinctively. And then I have to work on the psychology of the character, and then you build up, that indicates how she might hold herself, or what kind of shoes she might wear. It comes from inside really first, but there's a kind of marrying of the two.
But you do magical things with the way you walk. I remember you were in that Sarah Waters story.
Yes.
Where you played a sort of country woman with
it was a
ragged old raincoat and a piece of string around it and big heavy gumboots and so on.
Yeah, well I love doing adaptations because there's so much nuance that's been written by the author, and you have so much insight into the character. And her walk was described quite clearly by Sarah. And so, again, I was like, right, I'm going to find out what this walk is and manifest that into the character. And it was a weighty, heavy, very different to Mrs. Coulter. And Mrs. Coulter, I was like, well, she's monkey. She's part monkey in my mind. So I felt like I wanted some monkey hands. And when she got more angry and violent, when she'd let her monkey side out, she'd become more monkey, and just slightly. And it's fun to play that and push those, the levels of that. But I'm a stage actress really, and that involves the whole body. And I'm incredibly physical. And I think when I inhabit a character, it's in all the movements, it's in everything, every part of me. Because no one walks the same. I mean, no one or speaks the same. Everyone's very particular. So the more kind of nuanced and fun you can have with that, the better, and make it really specific, both from time and place, but also psychology. I was thinking my favourite character in the trilogy is Mary Malone, because, and I wondered if she was you in some ways. I don't know, only because, well, I'll tell you why she's my favourite character, is I sort of feel like she is, she's the most philosophical, well, for me, the most philosophical part of the book. And she, well, I love the premise, none on the run, but also that she is the most, to change her life, the sort of courage she has to completely transform her life, and the curiosity. She's like a character in constant search of understanding or of meaning. And I'm
very fond of Mary.
Yeah, to me she's the, I just feel that's
wonderfully played in the TV thing.
Beautifully played, and I just wondered the sort of marriage of religion and science as well.
Yeah.
And philosophy.
She was always a character I liked immediately. You know, you like some characters and you don't particularly like other ones, though you find them interesting to write about. But I was very fond of Mary always. And her function in the story is really to tell a story. She has to tell the story of when she fell in love when she was young, and there was a little sweet or something involved, and she put it in the boy's mouth, and they knew. And that is very important, because Lyra and Will overhear this, and then later the next day when they're on their own in this beautiful wide open world, and there's no danger, and they're together, and she picks up a little fruit, and she does that as she's heard in the story. So she knows that he will know what she means, and she knows what she's doing, and they both know what's happening. And that happens because of a story. And I think we do learn a lot about ourselves through stories. We learn how to fall in love through stories. We learn how to be brave through stories.
Yeah.
And in this case, they learn how to fall in love, or how to express this love.